The story opens with a young man from America named Richard. At that time, Richard was bored with his daily routine, so he decided to go to Thailand, a country in Asia famous for its beautiful beaches, to look for a new vibe. While walking through the crowded streets of Bangkok, Richard started his adventure by accepting an offer from a local thug to drink snake blood. For foreign tourists, it's like a challenge to test their courage and mental strength.
Never outstay your welcome.
After that incident, Richard stayed at a cheap guest house. After taking a shower, he accidentally ran into a couple who were also on vacation, just like him.
Thank you.
That night, while Richard was sitting alone on his bed, lost in thought, he suddenly heard someone screaming in the hallway of the guest house. It turned out the person was staying in the room next door. Not long after, the man greeted Richard through the ventilation hole. His name was Daffy. He invited Richard to have a casual chat while sharing a cigarette. During their conversation, Daffy told him about a very beautiful island somewhere. He said the island was kept secret because it wasn't a tourist destination for foreign visitors. According to Daffy, the island had an incredible view, with a lagoon in the middle, surrounded by tall cliffs. Besides being beautiful, the island also held very valuable natural resources. That's why not everyone was allowed to go there, to keep its secret safe. Hearing the story, Richard thought Daffy was just hallucinating from smoking too much. He even started to think the man might not be completely sane.
I'm just talking about the usual travel men and women with ideals. You understand?
The next day, when Richard returned to the guest house, he found a piece of paper slipped under his door. It was a map leading to the secret island Daffy had told him about the night before. Richard immediately went to Daffy's room to ask for more details, but unfortunately, the man had already died by suicide inside his room.
And you do never believe that something's gonna happen.
Richard and all the other guest house residents were then questioned by the police. Luckily, he was declared not involved and was eventually released.
Excuse me.
Because he became even more curious about the secret island, Richard went to see the couple he had met earlier. They were Etienne and Françoise, French citizens. Richard told them about the map and invited them to go on an adventure to find the island. Since Etienne and François were also looking for a new experience, they immediately accepted the invitation enthusiastically.
But
They quickly prepared everything, from travel tickets to all the necessary supplies. The journey to the location turned out to be quite far. They had to switch transportation several times, both by land and by sea. But when they arrived at a transit island, they were told that no boats could take them directly to their destination. Apparently, the island was part of a strictly guarded national park and was off limits to visitors. With no other choice, Richard and the others had to stay overnight and planned to swim to the island the next morning. When they returned to the inn, Richard realized he had lost his room key. Then two young men from the room next door called him over, inviting him to drink beer and smoke, and even offered him a change of clothes. Eventually, they sat together and talked there for quite a while. One of the topics they discussed was the rumor about the secret island. They said the island had an incredibly beautiful beach with clear white sand like crystal. Not only that, but there was also supposedly a large marijuana field, a place imagined to make anyone want to stay and smoke for a long time.
It's an island, right? Clear water, palm tree for the rest of your goddamn life. There's only no one's actually ever met any of these people, only met someone who...
After talking for quite a while, the inn owner finally came with a spare key for Richard, so he could get back into his room without any problems. The next morning, before starting their plan, Richard copied the island map and slipped it under the door of his two new friends' room from the night before. It seemed like he was hoping that one day they would follow. With full confidence, Richard, Etienne, and Françoise finally started swimming toward their secret island destination.
So? I don't know, but it looks like
So let's go.
In the middle of the journey, Richard and Etienne panicked when Françoise suddenly disappeared from sight. They immediately thought of the worst. Afraid, she had been attacked by a shark. Not long after, Françoise came up from underwater and surprised Richard. It turned out she was just joking with Etienne to scare him.
Oh, yeah! It's such a playful sense of humor! What about Muriel?
They continued swimming. After a pretty exhausting struggle, Richard, Etienne, and Françoise finally arrived at the secret island. Excited, they made their way in through the bushes. Not long after exploring the area, they were shocked to see a huge marijuana field stretching out in front of them. Etienne and Françoise walked closer, enjoying the moment, while Richard stayed on the edge, still a little in disbelief at what he was seeing. But the excitement quickly turned tense when Richard noticed someone sleeping while holding a weapon. He immediately realized the field had an owner and was heavily guarded. A guard monkey then woke the farmer up. Luckily, Richard reacted quickly, immediately pulling Etienne and Françoise to hide. At the same time, several other farmers started patrolling with weapons in hand. They searched through the field because they felt there were intruders. When they saw an opportunity, Richard and his two friends slowly crawled until they finally managed to get out of the field. After escaping, they followed the river, believing it would lead them the right way, but their steps stopped when the river ended at a waterfall. Richard and Etienne started arguing, blaming each other because they didn't know what to do. In the middle of that situation, without saying much, Françoise jumped first to make sure whether the place was safe or not. Once Françoise made it safely and signaled that it was clear, Richard and Etienne finally dared to jump too, feeling relieved. While they were celebrating their success, without realizing it, a black man was watching them from a distance. His name was Keaty, and luckily, he was a good person. He praised their bravery for making it that far. Then, invited Richard and his two friends to a settlement. The place turned out to be inhabited by many foreign tourists from different countries. It turned out the residents of the settlement were people who had once come to the island and then chose to stay and form their own community. Richard, Etienne, and Françoise were then taken to meet the community leader named Sal, one of the founders of the settlement. Sal looked at the map Richard had brought. Richard explained that he got it from a man named Daffy, who turned out to also be one of the founders of the community. Sal then asked if anyone else knew about the map. They answered no, even though Richard was actually lying. To keep the island a secret, Sal immediately burned the map so there would be no evidence left. After that, Richard, Etienne, and Françoise were officially accepted to stay in the settlement as part of the community. Then all the residents took them to a beach with an unbelievably beautiful view. The seawater was clear, the sand looked like crystal, and in the middle, there was a lagoon surrounded by tall cliffs. The view was exactly like what Daffy had once told Richard about. Sal then took them around while explaining that the place had been built together over many years. They deliberately kept the location a secret to preserve the island's authenticity. There, everyone did different things according to their abilities. Some farmed, fished, cooked, and even did construction work. According to Sal, they also had their own marijuana field, so there was no need to steal from other farmers, because there was already an agreement not to disturb each other's territory. And most importantly, they were not allowed to bring any new people to the island. Occasionally, Sal or other members would go to the city to sell a small amount of marijuana, and the money was used to buy food supplies and other essential needs. Day by day, Richard lived with his new family on the island. The atmosphere felt warm. They ate together, exercised together, caught fish, and even created their own games so they wouldn't get bored living far from the city. After truly being considered part of the community, Richard, Etienne, and Françoise got tattoos on their arms as a sign that they had been accepted. Not only that, 3 lanterns with their names written on them were released as a special welcome for the 3 of them. During those times, Richard was often seen secretly watching Françoise. It turned out that ever since they first met at the guest house, he had already developed feelings for her. Those feelings sometimes made him moody and less enthusiastic, until one night, while Richard was sitting alone, Françoise suddenly approached him and asked him to walk to the beach. At the beach, They walked casually while talking. Then, unexpectedly, Françoise admitted that she also liked Richard. Even though she was still in a relationship with Etienne, she said they could keep these feelings a secret. Françoise then invited Richard to swim, to see the plankton appearing in the seawall, but it turned out that was just an excuse. After that, the two of them got physically closer on the beach. A few days later, Etienne was furious with Richard. Apparently, he had already found out about Richard and François' relationship. But in the end, for François' happiness, Etienne tried to be big-hearted and let her be with Richard.
Okay, I know. Everybody knows.
The next day, heavy rain poured down. The weather kept them from going out to fish like usual. But Richard, who couldn't wait for the rain to stop, immediately grabbed a spear and his gear, then swam out to sea alone to hunt fish. Not long after, people on the beach shouted warnings at Richard because a shark was approaching him. He panicked for a moment, but he tried to calm himself down and stay focused on facing the situation. In the end, Richard managed to stab the shark.
And so it went for me. Just as I knew, the shark. But enjoy your dinner.
His success instantly made him the center of attention. The whole community praised him and considered him very brave. The next morning, Sal announced that their rice supply had grown moldy and their other necessities were also running low. Because of that, someone needed to go to the city to shop. No one volunteered, so Sal eventually pointed at Richard to accompany her. Like it or not, he had to go, for everyone's sake. Sometime later, Sal and Richard arrived in the city to buy various supplies. After living far away from the crowds for so long, Richard truly realized why the island had to be kept secret. He imagined that if such a beautiful island were visited by many city people who didn't care about preserving nature, the place would definitely be ruined. After finishing their shopping, they stopped by a bar for a drink. At the bar, Richard was suddenly shocked because he ran into the two friends he had once left a copy of the map. He immediately felt uneasy, especially when they said they had received the map and even planned to search for the island.
It was fake. It was just like you said. Yeah, then you wouldn't be holding out on us, would you? Let me... Asshole!
Sal, who overheard their conversation about the secret map, immediately started interrogating Richard. After Richard explained everything, luckily, Sal was still willing to forgive him. But on one condition, so she wouldn't tell the rest of the community. She asked Richard to keep everything a secret and follow her wishes.
Snook on the bed.
The next day, Sal and Richard returned to the island. Richard then distributed all the groceries to everyone, including a special gift for Françoise. However, Françoise didn't look happy because rumors had already spread in the community about Richard's closeness with Sal. She directly asked Richard whether he had done anything strange with Sal while they were in the city. To protect his relationship with Françoise, Richard eventually lied and said nothing had happened.
People say she's attracted to you.
Wouldn't have noticed that.
You promise?
Yes.
The next morning, Richard was shocked by the sound of people screaming outside. Another shark attack had happened, and this time, two men who were out fishing became victims. One of them died instantly, while the other, named Cristo, suffered a severe injury to his leg. The man who died was then buried in a simple ceremony.
Gathered here to God take your soul.
Meanwhile, Cristo was treated with whatever they had, but his wounds started to get infected. Sal disagreed with taking Cristo to the city for medical treatment because it could expose the secret location of the island. In the end, because everyone couldn't stand hearing Cristo groaning in pain anymore, they agreed to take him into the forest and leave him there. Only Etienne felt sorry for him and chose to stay by Cristo's side in that place.
But out of sight.
From a distance, Richard could see the two friends he had once given the copied map to appearing on the opposite island. As a consequence, Sal assigned Richard to stand guard there and ordered him to retrieve the map as soon as they arrived.
No more people. Or guards.
We could explain, right?
I want you up here every day.
This situation made Richard even more stressed, especially when Françoise came and immediately slapped him after finding out he had been involved with Sal, and apparently, the whole community had already heard about it. Not long after, Richard's two friends, along with their partners, actually arrived at the secret island. They looked very happy when they saw the marijuana field stretching out in front of them. But they weren't as lucky as Richard had been, because the armed farmers immediately caught them. Without saying much, the farmers killed them all. Richard, who witnessed the incident from a distance, immediately ran into the forest in fear. That night, Richard returned to the settlement and urged Françoise and Etienne to leave the island immediately. At first, Etienne refused because he couldn't bear to leave Christo alone in the forest. But since it was impossible to bring Christo along, Richard finally told Françoise and Etienne to wait at the beach while he went alone. In the forest, Richard decided to end Christo's suffering so he wouldn't continue to be in pain. However, just as he was about to leave, Richard was suddenly struck from behind. On the other side, Françoise and Etienne were being chased by the farmers. After being captured, they were all taken to the settlement. The head of the farmers was furious after discovering intruders carrying a copy of the map. He decided that all the residents had to be expelled for breaking the agreement not to bring new people. Sal strongly refused. For her, the settlement was their life, a home they had built for years. In that tense situation, Sal instead blamed Richard for everything because he was the one who had given the map copy to his friends. Hearing that, the head farmer gave Sal a choice. If she killed Richard, the community could stay, but if not, everyone had to leave the island immediately. Sal chose to accept the condition. Richard immediately panicked and begged everyone, including Sal herself. But Sal had made up her mind to protect the settlement. When Sal finally shot Richard, the gun turned out to be empty with no bullets. That automatically saved Richard. At the same time, Sal ended up falling into the head farmer's trap. From that moment, everyone finally realized in fear that Sal was truly capable of sacrificing anyone to protect the island. In the end, the entire community agreed to leave the beautiful secret island to save their lives. In the final part, Richard is seen returning to his normal life in the city. He tries to adapt again to his old friends and continue living as usual, even though his experience on the island is something he will clearly never forget. At one point, Richard opens an email from Françoise, his former lover on the island. Inside it is a photo of their memories together back then.